It's now my pleasure to introduce Professor Nick Kompridis. And I don't know how to do that. Professor Kompridis is a remarkable individual. Charismatic, very persuasive. When you're in a position like mine, you're always worrying about the budget, and you've run out of money, and then Professor Kompridis comes along and says, we could recruit so-and-so. And I think to myself, do I want to go down in history as the person who refused to recruit? One of the most distinguished scholars the planet has seen, and that's a very difficult position to be in. And hence this institute keeps growing in size, because Professor Kompridis has what I hope is an exhaustible ability to draw my attention to people whom it's very hard not to recruit. It is a remarkable institute. There is nothing like it, in my view, in Australia, and the credit is his. In fact, the whole thing was his idea. I mean, we always say that success has many fathers and failure has none. And whilst I have how might I describe it, a notorious, if from some perspective successful, reputation for recruiting people from a former university in which I worked, and where I am no longer welcome. Professor Kompridis came to me with the proposal that this institute be established. So I can claim no credit for establishing it. All I've done is say yes when he's proposed the recruitment of people whom no one in their right mind would, as I said before, want to refuse. We're very proud of this institute at ACU. It's been in existence for a very short period of time, like all of our institutes, but it is beginning to establish an extremely strong reputation. And I guess we are here this evening able to bear witness to the ability of this institute to attract top researchers, scholars from around the world, by the fact that we have with us this evening Professor Charles Taylor. But let me hand over to Professor Kompridis to present his address. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Dr. Gleason. If I choke up at some point, I'm going to turn around, compose myself, and turn back again. So be patient with me. Okay, so this institute is literally a dream come true. It is an old dream, going back to my graduate school days, when some of us would talk longingly about how great it would be if we were given the chance to build our own institute, gathering together the best people we could think of, people whom we respect a lot and with whom we could work together to address the most challenging problems of social and political life. It's not an uncommon dream. Many academics have dreamed it just as longingly as we did, but it is highly uncommon to have it come true. I have Professor McKenna to thank profoundly and deeply for making a totally unexpected realization of this dream possible. Without his support and commitment, we could not have built the Institute for Social Justice as well or as quickly as we have. Although he and I have worked together before, it is only in the last 2 years of working very closely with him at ACU that I have come to appreciate his enormous knowledge of the Australian academic sector in all of its peculiarities and complexities, especially to a Canadian, and his nearly superhuman execution of the task of building a rich and diverse research culture at ACU in a ridiculously short time. But especially I have come to appreciate his openness to compelling intellectual vision and to sound intellectual arguments. I have never come across a senior university executive who could get so genuinely excited by the intellectual quality of an idea or proposal, and who was as prepared to use the resources at his disposal to make it a reality. For all this, I'm deeply grateful to Wayne. Thank you. I'm also deeply grateful to our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Greg Craven, and to Australian Catholic University for creating the space in which the Institute for Social Justice can grow. I'm utterly certain that I would not have been given this opportunity to build an institute of this quality and scope if it were not for the fact that social justice and the common good is internal to the Catholic identity of this university. Social justice is not simply the research flavor of the month or the year. It is an essential existential and religious commitment of this institute. Of course, this has consequences for how one thinks of the enterprise of building an institute, since in this case, one is given good reason to believe that if one can build it right, it will last a long time. Not something one can say of most research institutes, which for various reasons come and go all too quickly, as I know from direct experience. Of course, the Institute for Social Justice does not see itself as a secular outpost in a Catholic university. We aspire to a pluralistic understanding of social justice, such that what we mean by it is capacious enough to incorporate and integrate ideas of justice in the secular philosophies and religious traditions of Western, non-Western, and indigenous peoples. It is no accident that the logo of the Institute is a series of spheres of different colors and hues, overlapping and encircling one another, and thereby representing relations of interdependence among diverse spheres and ideas of justice, each with their own specific character and form. In the 2 years since it was established, the Institute has attracted an extraordinary group of scholars, and I count myself very lucky to have them as colleagues. I have never worked in a happier, more collegial, more joyful environment. In fact, I don't think I've ever thought I would work in such an environment. Being an academic for 20 years, one knows that such environments are almost unheard of. So I want to thank all of my colleagues for their support, their empathy, and their many brilliant suggestions for how to build the Institute in all of its aspects. I want particularly to thank Professor Alison Weir for her unerring guidance and wisdom, which helped ensure that the foundation stone of the Institute was laid right from the very beginning. The Institute has been built from scratch, where it didn't exist at the beginning of 2014. It started with Alison and I, and soon after, 4 wonderful colleagues joined us. Dr. Magdalena Zolkos, Associate Professor Milan Kowalski, Dr. Kiran Grewal, and Dr. Nasser Gobadzadeh, who is unfortunately not here because of surgery that has left him in too much pain to join us. Nasser, we are thinking of you. The sweetest man on the planet. Together, they brought a very broad and highly original set of interdisciplinary perspectives, along with which they also brought a commitment to building a very different kind of research institute for which there is no existing model. This year, 2 more wonderful colleagues have joined us, Professor Roman Coles and Dr. Leah Harrow from the United States, bringing with them another set of original interdisciplinary perspectives, strengthening and supplementing the intellectual makeup of the Institute. While it is the case that there are a lot of outstanding scholars who could make an intellectual contribution to an institute of this kind, the class of outstanding scholars who are also committed to the time-consuming and demanding work of building it is far smaller. It takes time and energy to build something new, something that doesn't already exist in some form. I am therefore doubly grateful to my colleagues, grateful not only for their intellectual contributions to the Institute, but also for their institute-building contributions, without which an institute intended to last a long time would not be possible. The growth and reputation of the Institute for Social Justice has also been crucially enabled by our hugely supportive professorial fellows, one of Wayne McKenna's brilliant ideas. It is altogether fitting that the very first three to join the Institute, Professor Joseph Cairns, Professor Jennifer Nadelsky, and Professor Rajiv Bhargava, are here with us tonight to celebrate the launch. They're very special people, very brilliant scholars, and very dear friends. We will soon be joined by all our other professorial fellows, Professor Akil Belgrami from Columbia, Professor Jacqueline Rose, and Professor Kostas Douzinas from Birkbeck College, Professor Linda Alcoff from the CUNY Graduate School, and Professors Jeannie Moorfield and Paul Apostolidis from Whitman College. They will be joining us for our annual Sydney School for Critical Social Thought, about which you can learn from the beautiful booklets that will be distributed later. I cannot thank our professorial fellows enough for the work they have done on behalf of the Institute, serving as international ambassadors, contributing to our teaching programs and to our research projects in invaluable ways. They have opened doors for us that would not have otherwise opened. They have made connections with others that could not have otherwise been made, and they have enriched the Institute's intellectual life and enhanced its intellectual reputation. For 16 months, rather stupidly and stubbornly, I ran this institute without full-time administrative support. But for the generous help of Natasha Hanisi and Bita Akhtiari in the office of the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, I would have gone stark raving mad. I had this crazy idea that I needed to wait till I could find the right people who not only had the necessary administrative and managerial skills, but who also understood and could contribute in multiple ways to the mission of the Institute. I was finally rewarded for my patience when Ms. Paula Gleason came to my rescue as the Institute manager and Ms. Lisa Tarantino as the Institute's executive officer. We are all grateful for their steely competence, to borrow Akil Belgrami's description of them, and for their capacious energy, patience especially, and support. We are still a relatively small institute, and we have not stopped growing, but we nonetheless are a very ambitious institute. We aim to produce work of the highest intellectual quality and to become the most important humanities and social sciences research institute in the Asia-Pacific region. That's a given, more or less. But we're more ambitious than that. We are not interested only in producing intellectual work that fits within an existing research paradigm, although there can be considerable value in doing that. And we are not interested only in criticizing the shortcomings of existing research paradigms, although there is considerable value in doing that as well. We are above all interested in generating new research paradigms, making possible new kinds of research and new ways of doing research. The Sydney School for Critical Social Thought is not just our most important intellectual gathering of the year. It is also meant to be an incubator and facilitator for new ways of thinking about things, which may, with a great deal of luck and a great deal of wit, coalesce into something that takes on a life of its own, a different intellectual model, and perhaps a different intellectual tradition, a Frankfurt School that arises from the global South and the Asia Pacific. Unlike the Frankfurt School, however, the Sydney School would not be provincially Eurocentric in its intellectual orientation, but rather it would be much more pluralistic, a fusion of multiple intellectual and ethical horizons, conjoining Western, non-Western, and indigenous knowledge and practice. Finally, we also want to model a different kind of institute, one which engages with the world in new ways, building bridges between and relationships among academics and non-academics in order to serve as an agency of social change, an agency for the good. And we want to model a different kind of academic, too, by eschewing the standard model of the humanities and social science researcher as an autonomous monad, exploring instead the possibilities of collaborating together on the obdurate and wicked problems of the age. What we have in mind is easier said than done, because as humanities and social science scholars, we have been disciplined, deeply so, to think of our work in highly individualistic terms. My work, my theory, my project, my book, my this, my that. But what if we were to redefine ourselves in collaborative terms, working together in non-individualistic ways to fix our broken world? It seems to me that this is a goal, an ambition worthy of something that calls itself an Institute for Social Justice. For the last 2 weeks, the Institute has been graced by the presence of Professor Charles Taylor, who has been incredibly generous with his time and energy, giving 2 public lectures, making himself available to ISJ academics and our wonderful PhD students, and to Australian media. There was no one more appropriate to officially launch the Institute than Professor Taylor. Through his extraordinary body of work and his multiple and diverse engagements in public life that go way, way back, he represents the very best kind of academic and the very best kind of academic work that has a huge impact far beyond the academy. His work has challenged received intellectual frameworks, be they of language, secularism, freedom, or knowledge, and proposed compelling and powerful alternatives that have stamped themselves on my own thinking and many others in the Institute and across the world. We are deeply honored to have him with us and to hear him talk about topics that are among his deepest concerns, discussions of which he has shaped more than anyone else: multiculturalism and secularism. Please welcome Professor Taylor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Nick, for those very kind words. And I want to tell you how grateful I am to be here, because I've just learned more and more about the Institute. I knew a bit before. In the last couple of weeks, it's, to me, tremendously exciting. You know, we're living in a world, and in a university in a world, which is, I don't know how to say this without sounding insulting, but it's getting highly sclerotic in its difficulty thinking about really important issues. First of all, we have the way disciplines close in on themselves, where all the interesting questions are happening in between and it's hard to get to them. And then we have the fact that humanities and social science, where mainly the disciplines would be helpful in looking at these problems, are having a smaller and smaller space in the university. So the result of all this is spaces of reflection, such as you've opened here, are just worth their weight in gold. And I'm so pleased to be part of this in a very small way at the beginning. It's really a great experience.